Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Pilatus PC-21 by Iris Simulations. Now this is an interesting anomaly of an airplane. This kind of feels like somebody tried to make a jet, but they said, just put a propeller in the front, it'll be fine. This thing is designed to be an advanced military trainer. It's completely combat capable. It's very high performance, very aerobatic. It's got good speed control, and honestly, they did a really nice job on this plane. So let's stop chatting and get started. So climbing in the cockpit of this thing, you realize immediately this is a modern plane with modern aspirations and modern ideas. Everything about it is designed to be effective on our part. You'll notice our canopy here. It's got the little blow it up in the event that we, of course, have a little ejection seat issue. And the other thing, of course, you'll notice is we have a front seat and a back seat, and then you can actually operate this aircraft from either seat should you choose. Now, one thing I want to do before we start getting crazy here is you probably observe the fact that we've got all sorts of like things dangling off the plane here. These will actually remove themselves automatically once we get going. But in the event that we do want external fuel tanks, you actually go up. Oh, checklist, by the way, is very helpful on this plane. If you do want to go ahead and use external fuel tanks, you actually have to come up here and increase the fuel capacity. And what it will do is automatically place those external fuel tanks for you so that they're ready to go. I'm not saying you need to use external fuel tanks. I think this thing's perfectly fine on its own. Honestly, it's more maneuverable that way. But for our sake, I'm not going to worry about it too much. So let's go ahead and climb in. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get all of our pins in the right spot. And one of the things I love is they have a little slot here to basically put all the important pins away once you're done with them. So what am I talking about pins? Well, the first pin we're interested in is going to be the one between your legs. It's going to be your ejection seat one. Second one we're very interested in is this one that allows us to detonate the canopy. That's what this little kind of wiring is here. We can actually blow it up. The final pin, and this is the one I always forget, is the one between the legs of the guy in the back seat. Hey, how you doing, buddy? We're going to grab that and we're going to put it into our pile, and you'll notice the pins are just going to chill here. If we need to go ahead and pull these pins out later or push them back in, this is where we're going to get them from. By the way, we're out back. What we're going to do is we're going to close the canopy by clicking this little switch here. I found that it's a little difficult to do this one. One set, of course, is, by the way, this is very, very, very claustrophobic in VR. We have this little handle. And all we're going to do is we're going to slam it forward, and we're going to make sure that the canopy is locked. And you can see the one in the back locked with it. So now we're ensconced upon this fine aircraft here. So getting this one started, very, very simple. We're a turboprop, nothing really fancy here. We're going to come over here. We're going to activate all of our batteries and generators. Flight management system, I'm going to leave it off for now. There's a mishmash of technology between basic flight sim as well as kind of this. And not that it's a bad thing, but you'll see what I mean when we get to it. So I'm going to leave this off for now. Of course, I can turn on my multiple displays. I'm going to kind of conserve a little bit of battery here at this time. But what I'm going to do is turn on my little bacon light here to give everybody a heads up. Now, this thing is easy to start. So I'm going to flip up my engine page. I'm going to go ahead and cancel all those alarms. Good time, by the way, if you want to test fire alarms, you can come over here and you could do your fire test and get all sorts of fancy. You could all do different modes on this if you wanted to do so and all that stuff. Does not matter. I'm going to go ahead and shut that off. You're going to get a bunch of angry warnings here just to kind of let you know that it's not working. Starting this thing is easy. What you're going to do is you're going to reach over here. This is a little thing that says auto start. You're going to flip it up. You're going to wait until this number says 15, and then you're going to click this button here. Watch. I'm going to pop that sucker open. It's going to say auto start press. I push it. It makes a bunch of noise. I love turboprops. So 11, 13, 15, click. You're going to get a bunch of angry warnings here. We're just going to monitor everything to make sure it boosts up. ITT is positive. We're going to make sure it doesn't cross, looks like about 750 degrees here. We're going to get a bunch of warnings. Lights are going to come on and off. We're going to wait until we get about 50% power. The generator will be kicking in a second. Environmental control systems are up, unfortunately. Plenty of fuel, by the way, so I'm not worried about it. And we're just going to wait until the batteries kind of kick in. Yeah, 125, 135 amps each. So those are working well. And now we can go ahead and get the rest of our electronic systems kind of activated. Turn the oxygen on, stuff like that. And that is 50%. So I'm going to come over here, flip FMS. I'm going to go ahead and turn my MC and my HUD. It's going to take a minute to boot up, and we're going to play with that in a minute. We're going to go ahead and flip on our oxygen. By the way, when you flip on your oxygen, make sure you float to the back seat and turn on his air too. Apparently he gets grumpy when he can't breathe. I don't know what the deal with that is. One thing you'll notice up here on our screen is you've got our alignment phase. This is done completely automatically for us, so we don't have to sit here and dial in the digits like we do in DCS or anything. Just take about a minute to do, but of course, while that's running, we're going to kind of get everything else ready for us. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn on my probe heat. I'm going to flip that switch right there, get that kind of booted up. The other thing we can do while this is kind of hitting and getting all sort of warmed up is we have this great little options page that we can kind of fit with everything with. We go to systems here, we can go to instrument, and this is a cool page because it allows us to basically run around and get everything set up. We have a bunch of different modes here. We can flip us right over to start. We can say prepare for taxi. We can prepare for takeoff. And this is kind of handy because it'll kind of get everything preset it for us. We also have the ability to go ahead and climb in here and set this to external tanks. We could take the guy in the back seat and basically eject him if we wanted, or we can set the daytimes. But one of the things I really like here, of course, I'm in the US, so I like to set this in HG, and I also like to set my heads-up display to the correct heads-up display, which is the PC-21 there. Now, if we go to the next page, you're going to have a bunch of other things. You have virtual cockpit auto cruise automatic. This is based on your weight. The other thing, too, is you can actually shut off all the pilot warnings, and we can come in here. You have the things for the chocks, and it's auto, plugs and flags, that's auto, pilot auto. So you can have a lot of fun in here, depending on what you want to do. You can turn the pilot on and off, and the instructor. You can do the exhaust heat, and there's a bunch of fun little things in here that I'm glad they sort of added as kind of like a little bonus here. So I'm going to go ahead and bring us back to our system page here. Everything's all fired up. It's pretty much good to go. Like I said, I love military aircraft that are easy to get going. That's just satisfying. So one of the things you have to keep in mind is not everything here is going to be simulated. That's important to understand because we're used to like moving maps and things like that. And believe it or not, we don't have a moving map, nor do we have a chart display here. We have a simple digital map here, which is a lot like one you'd see like on an Airbus or something like that. Speaking of which, we have the FMS off of the Boeing. This is actually the 787 Airbus, and wouldn't that be an interesting combo? 787. This is the Dreamliner's little FMS here. Nothing special. The key thing here is it's just like a regular FMS. You basically tell it where it is, and then you go to the next page. Menu button. You go to FMC. It's going to say position initial route. We're going to go over to, we've done all that. We can go to our route page, and of course you can define all these characteristics if you want. We're at Westover Air Force Base today. That's going to be Charlie Echo Foxtrot. We're going to set that on the left. Sitting over here, our destination today. We'll keep it really, really, really boring. We'll go over to, we'll do something dangerous. We'll go over to Wyndham today. That could be a little sketchy. So a nice short flight. And of course, if we want to, we can go to the next page here. We can define a specific waypoint. For example, let's say I want my initial waypoint to be, I don't know, we'll keep it really, really boring here. We'll say Bradley is going to be our waypoint here. It's kind of our basis here. And that'll get locked in. And just like you're used to, it's the same thing as the 787. It's just a little tiny display that we kind of have chilling over here on the right. The thing I like about this, of course, is if you do go to the route page and you go to the legs page, you can go ahead and define all the important things. You also got your little progress page. But more importantly, you've got a radio page down here. And this is the one right off of our good friend over in the 787. Some of this works, some of this doesn't, some of this conflicts, and you'll kind of see what I mean when we get to that point. There's also a little progress page, which is kind of nice. I like that. And you can also, of course, if I wanted to do a specific arrival, I could come in here and dial that all in manually if I wanted to, depending on the kind of flight that I'm trying to achieve. So we're pretty good right now. Everything's been kind of queued up. We have a little notification that we have a TCN. That's just letting us know that it is selected. Speaking of TCN, this is our communications device here, and there's a lot of funky things in here in places you're probably not ready for. First one is transponder. You can probably see here we have multiple modes for transponder, and we have our mode S, we have our mode C. So if I activate mode S here, which is going to be pretty standard, and press the code button, notice it gives us a place where we can actually dial in our particular code. Now make sure you press enter when you're done, by the way. So we're mode S, and that's going to be all set. Now if we go to the COM page, we have COM1 and we have COM2. Now notice down here there's this little kind of knob here. The way this would normally work is you sit here and change to channel 2, channel 3, channel 4. If you press 3, it would give us channel 3 here. But what we're more interested in doing here is we're more interested in changing our primary frequency. Now, if I open this up real quick, you can see we need to be on 118. I'm sorry, I didn't look at it quick enough. 118350. To do that, we'd press this. We do 118350. Enter, and that will go ahead and save it into COM1. So now we can actually communicate with that. So that's important that you keep that in mind because that's where this is going to be. Likewise, on this particular page, you have your ILS settings. So if you wanted to manually dive in all of your ILS or VOR, this is where you're going to do it. The concept is going to be the same. We press the freak button. Let's say we wanted to do my standard. Make sure you do all the digits, by the way, and press the enter key. And now we've locked on to Hartford VOR. It'll actually tell you down here that this has been armed for that particular purpose. And the cool thing too now is this is going to be listed down here. You can change navigation modes by pressing these buttons right here, which makes it really, really easy to use. So if I wanted to use that particular VR, I wanted to use the ILS, I could just come down here and bop that button and it would be good to go. Now, it's one thing worth noting here that my heads-up display is ignore. The interesting thing, of course, is our heads-up display does have a little caret here that tells us where our currently selected waypoint is, as well as all that other critical information that we need to know. So now if we needed to change any of that, of course, swinging down here on the left, we could change what waypoint we're on. All that's programmed. We can go right direct Wyndham, we can go direct Hartford, or anything that we need to do there. And the next thing we're going to take a look here is our middle PFD. This is our primary flight display. Bunch of useful things here that's going to kind of help us out. We have our G display, which is kind of nice. Of course, we have our brightness if we need to make it brighter or dark. You can, of course, play with the different readouts and stuff if you need to do. The nice thing here is I like to put this on GS because I'm just one of those people. You can reset it. I love how there's a bunch of little buttons here on Node. Again, you can change into MC mode, which is the mission computer. You can go to FMS, which is basically the same thing. And again, you can pick exactly what navigational source you want to use. If I want to use the VOR, I can dial it in there. Like I said, for us, so we're going to keep it pretty simple here. We're just going to stick to the mission computer or FMS. Either one of those is going to be fine for us for this particular purpose. Of course, you have a nice little piece down here, which lets you know where your bearing pointer is. You can actually dial it into the TACAN if you need to. You can also dial it into where you're going, again, depending on what you need to do for that particular flight here. You get another mission pointer too, and if you want to get rid of that one, you can shut it all off and kind of leave it nice and kind of bland. One thing I do like over on this side is, of course, if you want to, you have the ability to come in here and change the range of this so you can see kind of your flight. We have this little knob here, which is our multifunction knob. That's not going to do anything for us. Relax. We have the ability to set our vertical speed adjust, our decision altitude. So if I press decision altitude, we can now come in here and we can actually make adjustments to it after having pushed that button. We can press barrel press, and then we can make adjustments to our barometric pressure. We can press the out button, and of course, we can come in here and we can specify what altitude we want to operate at today. This aircraft is quite a speed demon. So 3,500 is low, but you can see exactly how easy it is to use that knob to make those quick adjustments when you're doing your flight. Your course knob, by the way, and your heading knob down here are all set here and basically ready to go. And then your little autopilot is basically all set to go. One thing you need to know about your autopilot, it's considered to be LNAV. You have your approach, like I said, it's a little different. Of course, if you want a flight director, you can push that. If you do that, that's going to flip on all kind of your warnings. Obviously, we have nothing selected right now, so we're not going to see anything until we get to that point. So now we're ready to go. Our aircraft is all scooped up. One thing we want to do is give ourselves one click of flaps. That's going to descend those. We're going to go ahead and give it just a little tap. This aircraft takes nothing to get going. Basically, let go of the brakes, and we'll just kind of roll this thing. And again, I'm already doing 10 knots ground speed here. This thing takes no effort at all. For those of you who are huge fans of virtual reality, this thing is awesome. It is just, it's like a little, it's like a, I don't know the best way to describe it. It's like a little sports car. It's so much fun to fly this thing. So we're going to go ahead and tap those brakes before we get going. You really don't want to be doing more than 10 knots when you take any type of turn. Let's be more specific there. But it does not take much to get this thing rolling. And as you can see, we're coming at just a little bit of gas, and we're already doing 12. MC, the mission computer, has been selected, so we're pretty much ready to go. We're going to get ourselves all lined up for takeoff. This thing is, it's a demon when it comes to speed. Keep in mind, we do have 2 external tanks here, so that is going to limit our capabilities just a little bit. It's not going to be quite as ridiculously fast as it would be otherwise, but notice it just wants to run away on me. One thing that you need to know that's important about this aircraft that's different is the fact that we do not have a pitch control. Everything is controlled with one power lever on this one. It's not like most turboprops where you have the little what you could do with the propeller control. Not a bad thing, because that simplifies our work a little bit. Go ahead and tap a couple brakes, and we're just going to line up here with the threshold. This is a very big runway. It's probably one of the longest runways I know within 50 miles of me, actually, which if we had a B-52 or a B-36, a man can dream, we would be using that for this purpose. All right, so we are all set. We're going to make sure everything's moving smoothly. My stick got broken off during the flight, and we're good to go. Takeoff. Easy peasy lemon squeezy on this particular aircraft. One thing we can do, of course, is we can just come down here and flip on our landing light to give everybody a little heads up. We're going to make sure the fact that our speed brake is retracted. We don't want to by the way, speed brake works great. Make sure that thing's out of the way. And then all we're going to do is we're just going to smoothly apply full power. This thing is everything. ECS, FMS, OMG. So you don't have to worry so much about stomping on the gas. Keeping this thing stable is easy. It's going to pull to the left. It's a big propeller on the front of this thing. And basically what we're trying to do is get up to a speed of about 90 to 100 knots. And then we're just going to gently lift the front wheel off the ground. Got a little tiny crosswind today, which is pretty typical. There's 90 knots. All we're going to do is pull back just a little bit. And what it's going to do is it's just going to decide to fly. That is the best way to describe this plane. And there we go. Gear's going to come up right away. And we're just going to hold this attitude. This is about 10 degrees, I'd say. Unfortunately, we don't have that lovely little marker that we get on a lot of them that gives you a heads up that you're at a specific angle. We're going to get those flaps up. Again, about 150 is a pretty good climb out initial. We make a ton of noise with this aircraft, so you just kind of keep that in mind. And we are not quiet. We got about 150, 160 is pretty good. There goes the flaps. This thing's going to pick up speed pretty quick, and you can see we're already at a deck angle of 15 degrees here. This thing is climbing like a monkey. This thing's crazy. I'm going to go ahead and drop that off, and now we're going to go ahead and execute our turn, and we're going to back our power down to 90%. You can see my bottom right corner there that's coming down pretty smoothly. It looks pretty good right there. Nice. It's never going to be 90%. It's going to be 88.6. It's going to be 91.2. It's just going to do that. There's not a lot you can do. Again, the flight management computer is going to do most of the heavy lifting for us. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to maintain this. Like I said, anywhere between 180 and 220 is a pretty good climb speed. We are a turboprop, but we are a straight-winged turboprop. So we're definitely going to be at a bit of a deficit as far as being able to go ripping along here. One thing you want to keep in mind is this is a training plane, but it's also absurdly fast. So we need to respect the fact that there's going to be other traffic around us. So we don't want to be going too quick here. Lovely. And all I'm doing now is I'm just turning towards my course and keeping it relatively simple here. Oh man, this thing just goes. Man, does this thing go. By the way, look at the power, 90. Oh, I had 90 for a second there. And again, it'll never be exactly 90. Not much you can do there. We'll go ahead and level off. And you can see off in the distance, they took the time to actually model that correctly. And if you look at the bottom of my heads-up display, let me go ahead and get myself all nice and trimmed out here. You can actually see that diamond is at our particular destination that we're trying to get ourselves to. Trim on this is a very, very quick affair. I find that they made this plane a little too touchy. Like, I'm not doing anything. I feel like there would be like a slight delay. But again, that's just kind of the nature of the beast. And again, anything between, like I said, 180 to 220 is going to get you a pretty solid climb here. And that's about 5,000. Like I said, this thing takes no effort to get altitude. And keep in mind, once you get over about 21, 22,000 feet, you're going to be suffering the wrath of turboprops, and it's just going to kind of bleed out on you. But it will get you going pretty darn fast here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to enable the autopilot. Relatively straightforward. You notice, by the way, that was the flight director. If I enable the autopilot itself, nothing changes. Like I always tell people with autopilot, enable the autopilot, then fits with the settings, unless there's a particular setting you want. So what we're going to do is we're going to let this thing climb us up, and then we're going to go ahead and engage our altitude hold mode. So you can see right now I'm crossing about 7,500 feet. We'll go up a couple more thousand here, and I'll kind of level that off. One thing we could do, of course, is enable the navigational mode independent of the altitude hold, which is awesome. And like I said, we're just going to kind of keep on enjoying our ride. One thing you'll notice is if you look over on my display on the right, you can see that my power is slowly increasing as I climb. That's very typical for turboprops because obviously as we get higher, the air is a little less dense. So we either got to get hotter or we got to do higher compression, and we don't really change compression. So one of the cool things here, of course, is this thing will start blinking red and getting pretty grumpy at you pretty fast in the event that you exceed anything. So there's about 9,500 feet. I'm just going to hold my button right over here, and it's 9,500 right there. So I'm going to press down Alt, and what that will do is that will level us off. So now we are navigational hold, and we are automatically locked on. One thing they do, which I really appreciate, is you get this little asterisk in the corner to just kind of remind you what's going on here. And of course, now that we've got all this zoomed in and ready to go, we can take a look at our particular heads-up display. Now the heads-up display here keeps everything really, really simple for us. It's going to tell us our G's over on the side. It's going to tell us our angle of attack, our max G. Of course, another nice thing is our Mach number at 0.41 right now. Current airspeed, this is true airspeed, is at 231. You can see our ground speed is at 272. We're picking up speed as we level off. There's our first waypoint, which will appear as a little diamond, as you can see right there. We're using the mission computer for a navigational source. Current mission time. Altitude is 9,560 feet. We have 1 minute 42 seconds, and our destination is 8.1 nautical miles away. Other things to keep an eye out for is if you look right here, you have these little carrots. This little flight path vector tells us if we're accelerating or decelerating. If you see these carrots above the little flying mini airplane, means we're picking up speed. If they're level with the flying airplane, means we're not. And obviously, of course, if this is way down here, it means we're slowing down very rapidly. Vertical speed indicators, this little carrot right here, just sort of hanging out and relaxing. Current heading is up here. You can see already that our selected headings over here on the left. Our mission heading, where we need to go to get to our objective here, is going to be this big old quick carrot sort of chilling right there. So we're doing great. Everything's really, really nice. You probably say, hey, how come I haven't made a power adjustment? Because I don't need to make a power adjustment. 90% is fine. We can basically live at 90% until we need to put this thing on the ground, which of course we'll do momentarily, kind of a thing. So everything has been pre-programmed. We're ready to rock, and this is the kind of relaxing part of the flight, in my opinion. This, of course, would be doing all sorts of operational things, like how the mirrors don't work. I love the fact that like our little displays here. So let's go through our pages real fast as we're kind of settling. Notice, by the way, it automatically cycled to the next waypoint. It's going to take us over to Wyndham now. You can see I've got our hydraulic systems here. Everything's looking good. I was right. Hydraulics, that does make sense. Okay, I was right on that. Electrical, we're basically not pulling too much here, getting a little bit out of the batteries. Double check to make sure everything's good here. We get all sorts of angry alarms and stuff otherwise. Fuel, notice by the way, our external fuel doesn't have a little box or thing like that, but you'll notice my internal fuel here is completely unaffected by my external fuel. But the system is smart enough to add these two together to give you your endurance fuel total here. So you have a pretty good idea of what you have for endurance. ECS, and not going to do anything. Engine, you can see everything's fine. There's our torque readout. This is a 1600 horsepower engine, which is plenty. Temperatures, you can see oil pressures as well as RPMs. Everything's all kind of pre-programmed. You can see if the guy in the back seat is still breathing. We're perfectly in sync with each other, which I find kind of funny. You have your system page, which is just kind of the generic giddy up, let's go page. So as you can see, absolutely a really solid aircraft so far. I'm going to go ahead and flip the landing lights on that one off. We're now making our way to our destination. I really wish more of these knobs and buttons worked. I can zoom way out here, but you're not going to see much. One thing that's kind of cool is if you press STR and you zoom out, you can actually visually see the steer point that you're traveling towards. So you can tell here this is within 25 nautical miles, kind of a thing like that, which I appreciate. What I really wish is if you press RTE, it would draw the little line like it would on the real one. Same thing with MSN. It'd be kind of nice if it did switch to that particular mode. I get it that it doesn't do that, and I'm perfectly fine with that as well. It's just kind of a little nature of the beast here. So now, of course, we need to figure out how to get this thing down on the ground. And landing this one is relatively simple. So what I'm going to do is I'll kind of fast forward to the point where we're just about ready for some descent here. Yeah, this looks good. Let's go start a descent. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off the power here. Now, the airport, I intentionally designed it so that the airport would be right off our nose there, and you can actually see it right there. Descent on this thing is a snap, and I mean a snap. All you do is you take the nose, you put it forward, and that's it. And then we just wait. So we just have to make sure we keep our speeds within limits. And you can see right now, we're picking up speed pretty quick here. We're doing about 330. One thing, of course, if we need to improve our descent speed here is we can always deploy our speed brake. And that kicks in. It's a good speed brake. Basically, it allows us to descend steeper. And of course, if we were in a very aggressive descent, what we could do is we could pull the throttle all the way back here. So not only are we descending with speed brake, but we're also descending at 0 power, which is going to make that giant propeller in the front of us really help slow us down. One thing Flight Sim doesn't quite get right, it's just how powerful that effect is. And it's really quite amazing in your hand how you feel this aircraft just cuts through the air absolutely effortlessly here, and I think that's so impressive. So Wyndham Airport is a very tiny runway. It's an exceedingly tiny runway. That makes our approach a little different, and that's one of the reasons why I chose it here, because just to give you an idea of the capability of this airplane, we're definitely going to put it in kind of an austere condition. Now, one thing that makes this plane kind of interesting as far as coming in for an approach to landing here is you have to remember that it's not so much that we have an approach speed, we have an approach angle of attack. Now, if you probably noticed this little thing where the plane's going like this right now, that is just the nature of the way the controls are harmonized when they set this up. The real plane is probably a little better than that, but for us, it's going to be a little bit like that. And I apologize for this little action during approach. It's going to do that. I have a very nice joystick set up at home. It's got a 150 millimeter extension. The joystick is between my legs, kind of a thing. So it's optimized to make this easier, but it's just kind of one of those things. All right, so we are under 150 knots, which is plenty of speed, and we're executing our base turn here. And we're just going to slowly start bringing our way back around to line up with Wyndham here. And one of the great things about Wyndham, of course, is it's a north, south, east, west runway. Greatest thing ever. And you can see it just sort of chilling off the side here, getting ready for us to basically go right on the big old number 27 that you're going to see. So under 150 knots, that's pretty good for us as far as speed and things like that go. We're just going to kind of slow down, just checking to make sure everything looks good below me. Looks good to me, and we're going to go ahead and take my left turn. We're going to start dirtying the plane up. We're going to drop the landing gear first, and we're going to pop down a click of flaps. You can see it all unspirals to itself really nicely. And you're going to see the AOA indexer is alive. Go ahead and pull myself to final. We're under 130 knots. I'm going to go ahead and pop down that last click of flaps. Now, one of the things they did to make our life easier, I'm going to go ahead and freeze in the sky here real fast, is the fact you have this line here, which is the line you're going to be lining up at the end of the runway. This little circle here tells us where we're going to crash. So you can see we're going to the woods. The idea here is to line this circle up with this line being on the end of the runway. Now, if we do both of those together, theoretically, we're good piloting right now. So I'm just going to let the nose come down a little bit. We just have to get on the correct glide slope here. And that's about right. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I'm going to pull that nose up. So this is where the plane gets, not that it's bad, it's just, you're going to be a little annoyed. So if you look on my left-hand side there, we have our flight path vector. We have our little AOA index there. Right now, you can see it's bouncing between green and red. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to smoothly apply some throttle. And what you'll see is you'll watch it slowly go from red-green to green. There we go. And that's all it took. Now, the key thing here is the angle of attack indexer is a throttle exercise. So what you look at is see how it's starting to flash yellow? That means we're fast. Just pull the throttle back a millimeter and just wait. And if you see it start to creep back up again, that's okay. You can always add a little more throttle. So you can see how one little bump is going to send us all over the sky there. Now, what I find very interesting on this indexer is this one's very sensitive. Real indexers are a little more polite to you. And one of the things you'll end up having to do here is kind of flying the plane from the indexer. You just do the best you can. It's not going to be perfect. That looks pretty good there. And we're just going to keep it right on glide slope. Looks good. Now, we are a propeller plane, so we can actually pull the throttle back pretty early on this one. Nose up. And we have speed brake to help us out if we get a little fast. Nice. Delightful. Now, one of the things I love about this aircraft is even though we are not, a Cessna 172, that was basically a Cessna 172 landing, it does like to float. Even if you are perfectly on angle of attack, as you saw, we did the best we could there. You're still going to float, even if you pull the throttle back. Flight Sim just does not understand how ground effect works. So you can come in a little slow without too much of an issue. And keep in mind, there was no approach speed for this plane. Now, the speed that I approached down to the ground there was based completely on the angle of attack indexer and not on the actual speed. It was about 120, I think is what it came out to be. So as you can see, this is an absolutely amazing aircraft. There are a lot of intricacies in here that we skipped, things like the navigational computer and stuff like that. But that could always be for another day. Enjoy.